Do not miss my show tomorrow night. We don't have one Sunday. We have what's called the Super Bowl. I don't know what that is. Super Bowl? Is that like a big bowl of Frosted Flakes or something? But anyway, just kidding. 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Just a killer show. We're going to have Governor Ron DeSantis. We're going to have Leo Terrell. And we're going to have me. So I've taken a lot of time since early this morning to actually read the 388-page report that the special prosecutor put out. People have been talking about pieces of it. People have been giving their theories about it. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to demonstrate it to you, and I'm going to prove it to you, that Joe Biden committed serial felonies in violation of the Espionage Act. Serial felonies. It is much, much, much worse than you've heard anywhere. TV, radio, telegraph, homing pigeon. Unbelievable what this man did in the course of his long and lousy career in Washington, D.C. But first, I want to remind you what the relevant part of the Espionage Act has to say. Part E. Ready? Whoever having unauthorized possession of, access to, or control over any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic negative, blueprint plan, map, model, instrument, appliance, or note relating to the national defense or information relating to the national defense, which information the possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of any foreign nation, willfully, communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, or attempts to communicate, transmit, or cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, the same to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains, and so forth. You get the point. The original form of this law was passed in 1917. So the law is 107 years old. There are many aspects of this law I have real problems with. But that's the law. Now let's first clear out the underbrush. Joe Biden, at the time of these violations, was not president of the United States. Under the Constitution, the president is the executive branch. Everything flows from him. There are no departments. There are no agencies. There's no CIA, FBI. There's none of that. There's actually no Defense Department. None of it. And so the president is created in the Constitution. He is the executive branch. Everything else thereafter follows. President is not answerable to his departments. He's not answerable to his cabinet. He's not answerable to some regulation or rule that they put in place about declassification. I've made this point 100 times, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000,000. Only he is the only one who can classify and declassify at will. At will. Unless the Constitution is amended. And I don't know of anybody who's even proposed an amendment to change the Constitution. Can't change it by statute. Certainly can't change it by regulation. You can't change it by executive order. And so when Donald Trump took classified documents with him, he says, I thought about declassification, therefore I did. I would put it a different way. The physical act of removing a document is the action of a president who's declassifying. The president isn't going to commit a felony by doing what he can do in the first place. So the Espionage Act doesn't apply to a president. It doesn't even apply to a former president. It applies to everybody else, including the vice president, secretary of state. That's number one. Number two, can you indict a sitting president? The position of the Department of Justice over half a century has been no. Both parties, different presidencies, different attorneys general. But if you're Jackie Smith, the so-called special counsel who violates attorney-client privilege, who violates executive privilege, who violates immunity, who rewrites statutes, who undermines attorney-client privilege, all these things, which have created all these constitutional issues of first impression, well, then you would go ahead and indict and let the chips fall where they may. Would you not, Mr. Producer? Well, run it up the flag to the Supreme Court, see what happens. So they're literally bulldozing down every tradition, every understanding, all precedent when it comes to the Constitution, the rule of law, and Donald Trump. They've created these issues of immunity. Now, having said that, having generally told you about the Espionage Act, now I want to read to you. It's actually pretty compelling. All the talk is about Joe Biden, the imbecile, that the special counsel has concluded that Joe Biden's an imbecile. He does more than that. Throughout this report, I want you to remember Comey and Hillary Clinton. Throughout this report, he makes a devastating case of criminality on multiple occasions, and you're going to hear it. And yet, laced throughout, if he makes a devastating case, he says, but a jury would likely not convict. But a jury might view him as a doddering old fool, my words. But a jury might say that he didn't mean it. But a jury said, so there's schizophrenia in this report. Jim Comey could have written this report. It's clear that this prosecutor had no intention ever of charging Joe Biden, raising the issue, can you indict a sitting president? Ever. Ever. And so on one hand, he makes a devastating case of a serial criminal who's committed multiple acts of felony under the Espionage Act. Then on the other, he argues, but there's no point in charging because we'd never convict. We'd never convict. Why? He'll give you 1,000 reasons why. And then he compares it to Trump. And this isn't Trump where you got obstruction. I'll deal with that later. But let's deal first things first. Because what you're going to hear here is something you haven't heard anywhere else. Why? I don't know. And I don't much care. Let's begin the process. You ready, Mr. Producer? It's almost 400 pages. And one of the things about news people and hosts and talk show guys, and they want to get right to the summary. They want to get to the headlines in there. You know, they want to pull from it. And so I read the report. So you didn't have to. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified material. So let's stop right there. You've heard this all over because it's on page 1. But the strength of this is Joe Biden got up yesterday. He gets up in front of a microphone and says, they found that I did not willfully. It's right there in black and white. First sentence in the second paragraph. Most analysts, that's where they stop. Let's keep going. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. Okay, that's a crime. These materials include 1, marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan. 2, notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods. FBI agents recovered these materials from the garage, offices, and basement den in Mr. Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home. I cooperated fully. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're about to find out, he did this for half a century as a senator, as a vice president, as a private citizen, and he got caught. That's like a criminal raising his hands and saying, I'll cooperate, but the crimes were committed. The Espionage Act doesn't say that after you're caught, you cooperate with the government and therefore you have a clean slate. That's not what it says. However, for the reasons summarized below, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a lie. That's why it's important to read the report and not draw up theories and conclusions. They make the most compelling case for a prosecution and then they take it back. Again, it's like Comey. Later in the report, Biden regularly wrote notes by hand in notebooks. Some of those notes related to classified subjects, including the president's daily brief and National Security Council meetings. Doesn't get any more classified than that daily brief. And some of the notes are themselves classified. After the vice presidency, Mr. Biden kept these classified notebooks in unsecured and unauthorized spaces. At his Virginia, he rented a home in Virginia, which he left in 2019. at his Virginia and Delaware homes and used some of the notebooks as reference material for his second memoir, Promise Me, Dad, which was published in 2017. All right, let's stop. Let's unravel this. So he took notebooks full of classified information, among other things, put it in unauthorized spaces in his Virginia home and then in his Delaware homes, and he used those notebooks with a ghostwriter, shared the contents of those notebooks with a ghostwriter to write his second memoir. One's not enough for Joe. You know, he has such an important career. All right, let's keep going. To our knowledge, no one has identified any classified information published in Promise Me, Dad, but Mr. Biden shared information, including some classified information from those notebooks with his ghostwriter. That is a crime. Pure and simple, black and white. Right there under the Espionage Act. Remember what I said? The sharing of such information? Willfully? Of course he did it willfully. It wasn't by accident. FBI agents recovered the notebooks from the office and basement den in Mr. Biden's Delaware home in January 2023. Now think about this. As they're going after Trump, as they're throwing 41 charges against Trump, most of them under the Espionage Act, which I contend doesn't even apply to him, but that's second issue. Biden is silent. Doesn't say a thing. He doesn't say, by the way, you guys might want to search my home, my garage. You might want to search the Biden Penn Center in Washington. Doesn't say a thing. You might want to go to the University of Delaware where there's 300 boxes and he stole documents out of the SCIF as a U.S. Senator. They had this guy dead to rights. Not even close. Mark classified documents about Afghanistan. These documents from the fall of 2009 have classification markings up to the top secret, sensitive, compartmented information level. Doesn't get much higher than that. Last night during his press conference, or whatever you want to call it, he said, I didn't have the cover, with the things in the corner, the red colors. As somebody who was cleared at the highest level as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General, where I saw espionage activities for and against us, where we had to prove wiretaps and so forth, all that stuff. If something is marked top secret, sensitive, compartmented information level, it's not only has those red things in the corner, it has red lines and very bold black statement. Top secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information. Mr. Biden wrote his 2007 and 2017 memoirs with the help of a ghostwriter. In a recorded conversation with his ghostwriter in February 2017, about a month after he left office, Mr. Biden said, while referencing his 2009 Thanksgiving memo, it's a Thanksgiving memo about Afghanistan that he wrote to Obama, strongly opposing sending more troops in there, even for a surge, that he had, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs. So in 2017, he tells the ghostwriter, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs. That's 2017, Mr. Producer. So he knew he had the classified stuff, quote unquote. He didn't come forward and say, I have the classified stuff. At the time, he was renting a home in Virginia where he met his ghostwriter to work on his second memoir. Downstairs from where they met was Mr. Biden's office where he stored his papers. He moved out of the Virginia home in 2019, consolidating his belongings in Delaware, where FBI agents later found marked classified documents about the Afghanistan troop surge in his garage. Now, after stating a case that's really impossible to defend against, this is really a strict liability law. 2 paragraphs down, the paragraph starts with this sentence. Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. Several defenses create reasonable doubt as to such charges? That's why we have a courtroom. That's why we have a trial. You try to prove the allegations. They can raise whatever defenses they want. This is appalling.